How long have you guys been waiting out for? Come on in. Today I'm going to be showing you how to remove a strut assembly from this 2007 Honda Civic. I have the new part right here. This is a complete assembly of what a strut looks like. We have the spring right here, and the spring actually supports the weight of the vehicle, and inside the spring is the strut itself, and that is all tied together with a top hat. This is another strut without the spring and the top hat. I just wanted to pull this out to show you that this one is actually broken. To test if it's broken, you actually need to have it out, and it will either go up very slowly or not go up at all. This one seems to be okay. It seems to be worn out. It's not going up as fast as it should. And this one is from an Acura RSX. Also note that there is a left and right side. This one is a left. So make sure you get the correct side, because more often than not, they're going to be different. Common symptoms for a worn out strut would be excessive bouncing, going over any kind of bumps, as the weight of the vehicle is just resting on the spring, and the strut is actually there to dampen any kind of bouncing action the spring forces on the vehicle. There's also some hardware that is included. These have 3 nuts that go on the top. The tools needed for replacing the strut assembly is a basic hand tool set. Also we'll need a breaker bar, longer the better, and of course the strut itself. I used an impact gun to take off the wheel. That's not necessary. In order to save time, that's what I did. The bolts you need to take off the strut for this vehicle I have highlighted in pink. You need to take off this top bolt, this lower one, as well as you need to take off the brake line, which is that one there. And it's important that you keep on the other side here, it's important that you keep note of where the bolt exactly is. On most vehicles, this would be adjusting the camber. So the angle of the wheel itself is adjusted with these bolts. So it's important that you keep your original alignment, so you don't need to have it aligned at a shop. Besides those bolts there, I also forgot that you also have to undo a clip just back there for the ABS. There are bolts on the top you have to do. The 3 bolts I have highlighted, you have to take off those nuts for the studs, sorry. Take off those 3. Again, to take off this bolt, the lower one, this one for the brake line, as well as this clip. Then you are able to remove the strut. I'll first start by removing this top bolt here. Found it very interesting that the bolt is actually longer than the bottom one, and the head for it is 15 and the nut is actually 18. So I suspect that it is not original. I'm just going to be using a long breaker bar to remove this. Careful not to hit the fender on the top. And now I'll use an impact gun to save time. Now I will remove this brake line hose. I believe that is a 12mm socket. Be sure to keep this bolt for the new strut assembly because all the hardware is not included. It is expected that you use what came off the vehicle. Now removing the lower bolt, I will be using 19 on this left side, on the nut side, and a 17 on the bolt side. Just making sure that it is loose with the breaker bar. Then I can use the ratchet, hopefully, to take out the rest. Make sure to keep all this hardware as we do not want to lose it. See if I can remove the bolt. Using 15. Using 15. I'm going to try to remove the bolt. So try to push out. You can see I'm not heating. Cool. You can see I'm not heating it. It's okay. I'm stuck on the side. Push out. This may be the original bolt. I don't remember the other side looking like this. You can see how there's a cam on there. And as you rotate it, making sure the degree is correct, that the camber angle stays the same, matching on the strut. So we actually have to transfer this mark on the other one, which I will show you. Using a pair of pliers, I will now remove the ABS clip. Now we are looking at the top. You have to open up the hood of the vehicle to access the 3 bolts for the top hat. Be using 14mm combination wrench as well as the ratchet. There we go. Now I will show you how to remove the strut. Now let's try to remove the strut. Just have to shake it loose, pull it to the side, and there we go. You notice that there is a protective boot to protect the strut itself inside the cylinder from any kind of dirt or moisture. This has been compromised. There's also a yellow part in here. This is called a bump stop. So whenever your vehicle bottoms out, it would hit this instead of just smashing down. This is there. Top hat seems okay. On the other side, it was more bent, but definitely this is worn out. Comparing to the new one, the boot is intact. There is a bump stop. The bump stop is actually seems to be built in. I don't think there's one underneath. Yeah, the bump stop seems to be one piece with the boot here. And you can see comparing the two. I'm going to take the cap from the original one and be sure to use it for this one here to save whatever I can. So now that all the hardware is out, I'm going to be placing this back in. Be sure that the the 3 studs here line up with the 3 on the top there. While I have the strut out, I wanted to show you the 3 holes that the top hat needs to line up with, as well as a closer look at everything else. Now this is also free to move as it wishes. So you can see how important the strut is as a structural component as well. Right, placing the strut in, make sure that we go in the way we came out. Lining this up. The top is lined up. I'm now going to get a nut to hold it in place. Nut is in place holding the top. Now I can place these 2 bolts back in their original place. Moving this, lining this up with this, or should I say the hub for the wheel, lining it with the 2 holes. What helps is if you just get something in there to help line it up. Make sure the direction as well is the same. You don't want to be putting the nuts and bolts backwards. They had it in there originally for a reason. Remember, this one was a 15. I've placed the new nuts inside this compartment here for the strut. So the size for the new ones is not 14, it is 15. When we are tightening the bolts, just be sure that the marks on the side are lined up. And we are going to torque the top one to 43 and the lower one at 67. And we're going to keep going until we hear a click. Once it clicks like that, that means it is good. Now for the lower one, we will be doing, I'll double check the marks are good, and I am now going to change this to 67. And again, we want to make sure that the marks line up before tightening. Here's a close-up shot of what I have done. So to recap, we have torqued this top camber adjustment bolt. Make sure that the mark lines up with the strut that we have copied from the original. We have also torqued the pinch bolt on the bottom. We have placed the brake line back in place on the bracket, as well as the ABS clip back into there. All that is now to do is to place the wheel on and go for a test drive.